All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and excited to be with you here on this Friday. Big Friday for me. Schlegs, thanks for being a part of it. We ended our broadcast on the Morning Juice with Beam, myself, and Shark today. Schlegs, you were part of the inception of that, and I get to talk to you every day on here, so that's all good. But thank you for coming in this morning.
100%.
Really appreciate it. I thought it was a great way to go out. You added a lot to the show, and it was a lot of fun. And rarely in life do things get to end maybe the way that you want them to. So it was an awesome thing that I got a chance to play this morning about Colonel Chamberlain. I always try to say, hey, Coach, life's about positivity. And, Pat McAfee said, life is wrestling where, either people are heels or baby faces, you're good or bad. And if, you're bad, then you're just a heel. And that's what you are. And there's people like that. And then there's people that come into your lives that are a positive influence that help you a lot. Well, and then those people, they're deemed the babyface. And so that's tremendous. And there's a book that at Ohio State, Ryan's had guys do this. And Tress used to do it. I think Urban, they did it a little bit. We'd always have a book to read in the offseason. The upperclassmen, they'd present it to the younger guys. And I look at some of the books that we read, and, Today Matters, If It Ain't Broke, Break It. What It Means to Be a Buckeye was my senior year, which was stories about all the different Buckeyes. And then they did a second edition of it, and I was grateful to be a part of that and to be included among some of the Buckeye greats. And just your story of Ohio State. I think that's always important to kind of know the players you're playing with. And we talked about the uniforms and the jerseys and, renting them versus buying them, and got into that a little bit earlier this week of, what your jersey is and how it reflects you and the guys that have worn it before. But there was a book that Tress had him read. I want to say it was like 2009, 10, 8, 9, 10, somewhere towards the end and after.
I think it was 11.
Was it 11? Was it the only end of that 11 season? It may have been the 10 off season into 11.
Going into the 11 season before he left, because I remember doing this book right when I got there.
So Jerry Rosinski bought the copy of the book and gave it to me. Fick used to reference it all the time. It was called The Traveler's Gift. And it was long and short of it, which by the way, I was looking through my bookshelf over there yesterday, and I must have let somebody borrow it, and I cannot find it anymore. And I'm going to have to rebuy it because it's a great book, I think, on life and leadership. And I think it's a very easy and read, but it basically goes through the inflection points of the time traveler getting to go and meet with all of these people, the moment before their critical decisions that they've made. And I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. Abraham Lincoln, before he said his Gettysburg Address, Truman before announcing that he was going to, before the decision to drop the atomic bomb. And then another lesser known one, also from the Civil War, Colonel Chamberlain. And with each one of them, there was an association with like a phrase or a theme that they had. And Colonel Chamberlain's was be a man of action. And I played this morning on my local show. And if you're into leadership and you just like self-improvement, leadership, all these things, I get to speak. I do some of that. I've been building some stuff out. Ryan Hawk does a tremendous job with his Learning Leader podcast, AJ's older brother. And he had a historian on talking about Colonel Chamberlain. And it's at the Battle of Gettysburg. Union Army is pinned down. And the Gettysburg, as people look at, was essentially the turning point of the Civil War. And if the South would have won, I don't know if they win the war, Schlegs, but it probably goes a lot longer and is much bloodier. And maybe the Union just concedes. It says, hey, you know what? No mas, we could beat you, but the bloodshed is just too great. Or maybe there's another million lives lost just because it drags on for more years. But they're at the Hill of Little Round Top, and it was on the left flank of the Union Army. And Colonel Chamberlain was there with the Massachusetts division, and he was tasked with protecting it. There's about 200 soldiers there, and Colonel Chamberlain wasn't a soldier. He was drafted, enlisted, and drafted or enlisted, and then became in charge. He'd only been a soldier for about a year, and he had to protect the flank. They're getting battered by the Confederates. It's the Alabama regiment on the other side. Waves and waves keep coming, and eventually they're running out of munitions. Their ammo is low. They have not much left, and he chooses at that point to be a man of action. And in being a man of action, they didn't have much left. And so the only other option, and this is one of my favorite things from old school movie Schlegs, whenever they drop the fixed bayonets and you see the guys like, we may have guns, but we're going into hand-to-hand combat. So you put the bayonet on the end of the rifle, fix bayonets, and then he orders his men to charge with him as well. And they're able to turn back the Confederate army, thus preserving the flank and ultimately allowing the Union forces to win at Gettysburg, and then ultimately turning the tide of the war as they pushed away. I believe that was the Army of Northern Virginia, which was the biggest army, and it was General Lee's for the Confederacy. And so that was a huge turning point to be a man of action. I used to hear Fick Schlegs, and I know you did. Fick would talk a lot about that as well. Be a man of action. Whatever it is, get as much information as you can, and then make a decision and go. And good or bad, like I said, try to pull in as much as you can, but ultimately you have to be decisive with what you're going to do. And it's something that's resonated in my life, and I hopefully that'll resonate in some of the people that are hearing this and listening as well, and they'll be able to figure this out and move forward. But Schlegs, you know what? Be a man of action. That's all I want to tell you.
Yeah, well, I remember this book for man of action. The first chapter was "A Buck Stops Here." And I think so many times everybody wants to pass the buck. They don't want to take on responsibility. And that was like a buck stops here and a man of action. It's like I tell people all the time, like the one thing you could say about the Armory right now is like, we have 2 freaking bathrooms. Well, why? The building was built in 1914 and it was the Livingston family seed storage place. So if I wanted to wait on the city like we have for the last 15 months, we wouldn't have this awesome facility that's trying to change people's lives. So guess what? A patent quote that also resonates with being a person of action is a good plan executed violently today is better than a perfect plan executed next week. And that is the point. And I think like in tying all that together, even as we've heard people talk about play calling and big games and stuff like that, and what you saw in the playoffs and what you did it, and why like Ryan Day has so much confidence. Now it is that person of action. It is the let's run a screen here, or it is the hey, it's third and whatever. Let's throw it up. This is what we're seeing. Let's do it. Like be a person of action. But that is not just in football. It's also in life. It's where you are in your family. It's where you are in your business. So again, like all the things that we talk about in here, Bob, are things that tie in, and those 2 things of that are always something that stood out to me.
So one of the other things you mentioned, did you say, I'm sorry, I dipped out for just a second, the buck stops here. Do you know who that was associated with?
Yeah, Truman. That was the atomic bomb.
An atomic bomb,
that was
because
him.
ultimately he's making that decision. Like you've got to own it, and you have to own all of your decisions and everything that's ultimately a part of them. And as we lean into this and look forward to this, and this may seem like a long prelude or interlude to before we start talking about sports, but I think there is an element where, there's you always hear Woody Hayes was big into this, the sports and military relationship because of the men you're leading. And we make the analogies all the time. And sometimes it gets a little loose because very rarely is someone dying on a football field or in a battle of competition. Much different than our military. And so I always reserve that and say I have great respect for those men and women who serve and do those things for us. But leading a group of people and leading different types of people and different, essentially regiments or position groups or whatever it may be, like those things are transferable properties and resources for that. And so understanding it is big. And I think, as we look right now at this, number one message, read books, educate. I always get a reading list from Tress every year, and I need to make sure I go grab that from him. He's busy because he's governing. He's governing right now. Schleg's literally lieutenant governor. Lieutenant Governor Jim Tressel, but I always get a list of books from him this year. And I was thinking about that last year of a foundation to build or last night to build a leadership class on it. It's like, dude, this is great. This is a book that Tress gave us. And I think it speaks a lot of the leadership qualities and characteristics, the fundamentals of winners, if you will, to be a part of it. And that's one of the things I think right now, as we begin to look at this, some of those be a man of action, the buck stops here. Like, there's I will have a decided heart is one of the other things that I would choose.
Conviction.
That's in Frank. I have a decided heart, I believe.
No, that was Christopher Columbus.
Christopher Columbus. I have a decided heart. Yes, of going to pursue the new world. I would choose to be happy. That was Anne Frank. That was hers. Gosh, it's all kind of rushing back now, Schlegs. There's 7 chapters with it all. And or 8, maybe. I'm not sure.
No, 7.
7. Look at you. Look at you. I need to go back. I need to dive back into it. We'll have a conversation offline about this later. But that's one thing that college sports has failed to do. The buck has stopped nowhere. They passed the buck. They passed the buck around more times than Schlegels is passing a bull in his sophomore year of college, high school, senior year. I don't know. Pick your year. That thing's being passed around. No one has been a man of action. There has been nothing that has been decisive in this. This is what we need to do. This is how we're going to do it. They have instead let the legal system dictate that to them. And so now we're in the process of starting to talk about playoff expansion. Well, I'm all for playoff expansion, but here's the thing. We're talking about that, because that's great. You know what? Playoff expansion, that's the juicy part. That I would say this. Playoff expansion, Schlegs, that's like, you sit down with your wife, if you're building a house or anyone's ever done a renovation, that's you're picking out your countertops, you're picking out your cabinets, what the floors are going to look like, the paint color, appliances, like all the stuff that's fun. The reality is that's the stuff that can only be done after you get the plumbing in, the electric, get your HVAC, get your walls up, get your foundations if you're building a house, all those other things, the stuff that's the actual work. And so the 16-team playoff is that shiny object that's out there. It's, hey, the playoff, it's fun. Everybody loves it. We love watching it. It was great this year. More. But in reality, the things that need to get fixed are the foundation of college football.
Yep.
That's not as fun to talk about, Schleiss, because no one wants to talk about, well, how do we make sure the players are still getting compensated, they still have access to NIL, but making sure that it's not a true pay for play and there is some level playing field where, you're going to have the reason why people love the NFL is parity. And now you're never going to have true parity in college football, but when you start the season, how tight is the funnel of teams you feel like can win? And can people join that party with good coaching, player acquisition, development? And when you acquire good players, can you keep good players if you develop them? Or can they just leave every year? And so the transfer portal is another piece of that. Getting the eligibility piece figured out where guys are suing. Well, I don't want my JUCO years to count. Boom, here's more years. How does all of this work? And so that's the problem, Schlegs, being a man of action, being convicted, getting this figured out, because that's the ugly part. It's the part that's not as much fun. It's the part that no one wants to talk about because there may not be good answers, or maybe there's multiple good answers in some questions, but sometimes it's picking the least bad and then trying to mitigate and massage that and figure out how you can pair that with other decisions to make it all work together. But it's not easy, as opposed to, hey, we'll just go to 16 teams. That's great. But then when you do that, the foundation's still crumbling. There's still issues here. What's it going to look like in 3 to 5 years? And then also, how we determine who these teams get in. I mean, my man Bo Bishop had a great line this morning. He was on after me in the mornings on 97.1. He's like, and it's the truth. And it's the old history saying, the victors write history, and so the Big Ten and the SEC are writing this. The Nick Saban element coming in. So we're going to get into those two things next. But that's a big piece of it. And what are some of the considerations, how this is going to work? Well, that's what we're going to have to figure out. And we'll figure that out here. We'll try to help solve those problems for you here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. We've got our friends over at Export, and they want to protect what matters most with Export mouthguards, trusted by professional athletes and designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouthguards are scientifically tested to help absorb those high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouthguards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber. They custom 3D print that bad boy right to your grill for more protection, max comfort, clear communication, and better performance, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby. It's important to do that because then you can save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. More of our solutions and proposals coming up next. So we've got this
writing down stuff. I love it.
Writing down stuff. All right. So you want to throw the Nick Saban stuff up there first of what that looks like. And some people are happy. There's some people that are sad. Does it make sense to have Nick Saban, be the czar, if you will, of college football? I know this is a Friday show, and usually
that's not the one. That's not the one. Respect of all. I wrote that thing about Saban on there, guys. Sorry about that show sheet. That was me just writing in. So that's not the Instagram one. I got to find it.
Well, We can find this, but they want
No,
Saban.
because we talked about it the other day though, Bob.
Yeah, we can get into it again. So let's get to this. Have you seen any of these proposals or what like people are looking at 14 team versus 16 team and how that'll work?
Well, here's what I do know, and it goes back, and I love the fact that you brought up the traveler's gift. I've been reading a book called The One Thing. The One Thing is about really is like you can't multitask. And I've said that, Bob, you have said this, and I've always attributed this to you, is people so many times confuse activity with achievement, and then I take that to where, commitment versus involvement. And if you're involved in 10 things, you become a shadow of your elite self. And really, the one thing, this book, and I'm only a quarter way through it, it is, what is the one thing that you're good at? And like, just be really good at that one thing, more productive. And even in business at the Armory, it's like, what is the one thing we got to do right now? And allowing the people on your team, hey, listen, I don't need you to do 5 things this week. I need you to do one thing. And that's where my question to you, Bob, goes to, all right, you want to go to this bright, shiny thing that you alluded to, 16 team playoff. But in order to get there, what are all the really hard things that you got to do? We got to put them on a list, right? So you have, fix the portal. That is something that has to happen, okay? We talk about athletic departments. We talk about guys leaving their contracts or whatever it is. We saw this with Nico's brother. Kid had only been there for a handful of months. Now he's leaving. He's already gotten part of his contract. He's added no value whatsoever to the team in any type of capacity. And now he's going to leave and make more money. Like, that is wrong, right? So is there a buyout? Like, is the contract voided? Is it not upfront? Is it paid every month? Like, whatever. Okay, so you got to fix the portal. You got to fix the revenue share of how it's actually going to look. Then if you go to 16 games, and again, everybody's chasing the dollar, but you can't ask the two teams that are then going to be in the playoff to then play in a conference championship. In the NFL, they don't have the division championship. Like, you won the division through the year. So does that mean now we got to change all schedules where all teams that we have talked about on this show, Bob, about more teams? I know the ACC was talking about reducing games for basketball, right, to give more good on good outside conference help because they only had 4 teams that made the tournament this year. Same thing in football. Does the SEC go to 10 games, right? Get rid of the FCS games that they all play. Say, we're going to play a 10-game conference schedule, 2 non-conference, and boom, there you go. But you can't play an additional 13th game to then go into another 4 games. Like, that's a competitive disadvantage, honestly, for those 2 teams. How does that look? You have to, so then what is the one thing we got to do now to then go to this one thing, to go to this one thing? The problem is, where does the buck stop and who's making that decision? To me. And that's why I like this Saban-esque thing. And we had Bill Benner talking about it, Bob, of, I would like for somebody to have more of an administrative role, but like, you can surround that guy that has the ear and the credibility with the coaches that understands what is needed from them, who manage and run the teams, to be able to put the best product out there. But it's like, what of those things that I brought up is the one thing we got to fix, and what is that order? And that's how you have to attack it. You can't multitask it, because we see where we are now, where everybody's just trying to go to this 16-game deal when we haven't even figured out the revenue share of that yet.
Yeah. There's a lot there, Slikes. And like you said, a lot of that comes into the traveler's gift of just no one's had any conviction on how they want this to look. And there's a lot of jostling and pushing back and forth. And the push between going 14 to 12. And I will say, I think Nick Saban is the guy who will look at this and say, what is best for all of college football? What makes this work? But the thing they need to get working first, before we get to the playoff, is that portal, the situation, contracts. When you sign with a school, like, hey, I said 2 years, man. You make a commitment, it's 2 years. You want to leave after that, that's cool. I'm fine with it. But like my dad said, like, I wanted to leave. He says, you're going to want to leave every day. My job is to make sure you don't want to leave. Like, how hard was it when you first got to Air Force, Legs, and you're doing like a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
I mean,
I chose that. I chose
it, but it doesn't mean that every day you're thinking like, man, did I make the right choice? sometimes like, this sucks. Like, if given the option of like, hey, do you want to go do this right now in this specific moment? Or do you want to go somewhere and like lay by the pool and drink some beer? Like, yeah, I'd rather go lay by the pool and drink some beer because that's what human nature is going to tell you to do, to pick the easier path. And so when you go somewhere, understanding that if a coach cares about you, it's going to be hard. And so you need that 2-year commitment. And if you want to get in the portal, like, boom, you can get in the first portal, but like, you can't get in the second portal. Like, that's not how it's going to work.
No.
And by the way, if you take money, like, you've got to pay that back now. And so here's what we're going to teach: consequences for your actions. You can get paid. There's opportunities here, but in getting paid more, and hey, you know what? If you want to go someplace like and you don't want to take any NIL, that's fine. Then you know what? Then maybe you could transfer every year. But if you want dollars, you need to be somewhere and have a commitment tied to that for a couple of years. And there's none of this first window, second window, all that other nonsense.
I think it's also where when you start to do this about like the players' rights, and I totally agree with that. In the makeup is there needs to be a college football players association.
Yeah, or just even some sort of organ. I don't even know if it needs to be a union.
No, 100%. But there has to be an organization that has the best interest of them. So when these parties, it's not just, oh, college football is deciding this for the players. It'd be like, hey, listen, here's what it is going to be. We're going to agree to that. That hey, incoming freshmen, it is a 2-year contract. Schools can't cut you. They are all in. It is guaranteed you are there for those 2 years. And then your NI deal is structured accordingly. And it is a 2-year contract. Then whatever that transfer portal looks like, and here is when you can transfer. And if you take money before that, and this is how you pay it back, or you go to another team and that team then buys out what that team had already paid you. That way they're not losing any money. Because when you up and leave, like in the spring portal, like those teams are counting on you not going into the portal looking at that position because they know that you're there. And so if you're actively looking for more dollars or more suitors, then it's like, okay, fine. Like, all right, we're going to get that money back and we can take that money and then go allocate those resources in another area, whether it's paying guys that we want to stay or going to get somebody to fill the void that you left. So that's what I'm like. It is honestly so simple to me, just being rational of how the order of operation goes in this to get to where we ultimately go. But nobody has to decide how hard is convicted, and nobody wants to be able to say the buck stops here.
Yeah. And so they've got to hold it. They've got to own it. They've got to make those decisions ultimately as they move forward. And so hopefully they'll be able to get some of those things figured out on the NIL front, on the dollar, like with the dollars and the contracts. And here's the thing: you sign a 2-year deal and a team, you're playing really well as a sophomore, you play a lot as a freshman. Okay. It's like, I have no problem. The team can come to you and say, hey, we'd like to redo that. We're going to extend you. Just like in the NFL, you have another year left on your contract. You played a lot as a freshman, Schlegs. So you know what? We're going to give you more money. And can we put another 2 years on this? Or maybe just give you more money next year. And so as a good faith measure, then when you come up and you're at the end of your sophomore year, hey, they did right by me.
Yes.
They didn't have to pay me. They did, because we want to pay you commensurate value. You're a starter now. You've done everything that we wanted you to do. And so as a player, not everybody looks like this, but yeah, it's a way to have that good relationship and have a little good fortune beforehand, good faith. And then maybe you'll take a little bit less so you could get more somewhere else, but you're going to be loyal. And that's not everybody has to do that. That's the way I kind of look at life. And when people take care of the people that take care of you.
Yep.
And so if you do that, then poof, that'll work out and it'll force people to develop strong bonds and relationships and everything else. All right. I know we've got a lot of stuff to get to today, but there's a lot of things going on with this 16-team playoff. We got some Kurt Signetti news that we'll throw in there.
Let's talk about that.
Big progress reports.
Yes.
We start talking as well with what is going on. And my goodness, we just got a banger of a news dump that just got thrown in the chat by our producer, Mr. Patrick. We'll get to that coming up next. Usually do things rarely break live. And today, this came out earlier on Friday morning. Jordon Hudson, the 24-year-old girlfriend of Bill Belichick, has reportedly been banned from the UNC facility. I'm curious who is reporting that. Pablo Torre of ESPN, or I don't even know if he's still with ESPN. He was for a long time. Pablo Torre reporting that one Belichick family source adds, there's a deep worry for how detrimental Jordan can be, not just for North Carolina, but for Bill's legacy, reputation, everything he has built and worked for decades. So I wonder if this is him, if this is UNC, if this was maybe his son, Steve, like he said, family member, someone's talking who's related to him about this. And maybe this is just them trying to save his face and kind of she's going to fall on the sword for this. I'm not sure. Yeah, Pablo Torre, formerly of ESPN, reporting that on Yahoo Sports. To me, that's fairly significant, Schlegs.
This is amazing. I just like reading the chats.
Oh, listen, the comments are always better than the story. That's an Anthony Rothman line, and I want to make sure I give him credit, just like you attributed activity and achievement. Comments, always better.
Oh, my gosh. So it's like, here's what probably somebody is saying, and maybe Bill was feeling this, and,
search your feelings.
She's a good-looking young lady dating a significantly older guy. The story is always about her and not about how good of a football coach and legend that Bill Belichick is. And that becomes a distraction. And it's probably coming up to where guys are talking about it or whatever the case may be, that's being detrimental to what Bill and his son. Like, that's the other thing too. Like, in all these things, it's not just Bill Belichick. Like, this is me as a coach. It's not just Bill Belichick. It's not just his son being a D coordinator. It is also the strength and conditioning coaches. It's the other assistant coaches, the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. Like, their jobs are on the line. And this is becoming a distraction that can lead to other things. And so maybe whether it's Bill or
what type of other things, Schlegs? Exciting things, you think?
Well, I mean,
one of my friends' dads,
for him. Go ahead.
He used to say a kiss is an upper persuasion for a lower invasion. Like, is things like that? Is that what we're talking about?
Could potentially, but it's all you hear. And you're not, there is one great thing we never mentioned on this show that I liked that we should be talking about. And that was like Bill took the names off the jerseys. It was very Patriot-esque at practice and things like that, right? Like, I don't know why guys would have.
That's crazy. Never got to that.
But like he's implementing the Patriot way in UNC. And those are the things that you want to talk about. Instead, we're talking about a 24-year-old woman and her real estate portfolio jumping up to $9 million. And we're talking about all these other things that don't apply to North Carolina football. And the things we should be talking about are how he's recruiting. What are they doing? How is he bringing, his way, the Patriot way, the Belichick way, all the different things that we talked on this show about all the other things that she was trademarking.
Yeah.
As opposed to the execution of the trademarks, which is the thing that can actually turn a program around. And people probably down there are like, man, this is BS. Like, look at all the things and concessions we're making for him to run this show. But look at the sideshow that it has become.
It's a lot there, Schlegs. I had a thought, and it just had escaped me about trying
to had one of those main lunches that I had on the
I should have had a drink this morning before the show. Unfortunately, I didn't. With that, like you said, she's trademarking. There's some business stuff. There's the jerseys. You know why Belichick took the names off the jerseys? And a lot of times in New England, when I was there in the offseason, we wouldn't wear jerseys. The defense would wear gray shirts and the offense would wear blue shirts. And he had a very specific reason for this. Do you know why that is?
Probably he just wanted to see who the players were and not show the production with a name.
Well, number one, it does stop the maybe bias, if you will, of coaches looking at that. But you can kind of usually tell who people are. But he said it forces you to know who everyone is on the field, and you have to be able to call them by name. And so
I like that.
He's like, you don't call a guy by a number or just yell. He's like, hey, Anthony, do this. Schlegs, do that. Bobby, do this. Like Devin McCourty, like he'd be talking like Nate Ebner, like you would have to use their name. And I tell my kids, if you want to talk to me, say dad. That will acknowledge that you are talking to me. And so then I will engage with you on a conversation. And so oftentimes in the football field, that doesn't happen. You may, like, I made the call, I said it. Well, who did you say it to? Well, I said it. They didn't hear me. Well, they're doing their job. They may be talking to someone else. They may be locked in and trying to figure out what their responsibility is going to be and what the offense is, or defense is trying to do. So say their name. And it was one of the most genius things I had ever heard. Like, you know
communicate.
what? Great communication. And honestly, like, one of the most important things in all of sport, like, talent is key, but especially you start getting to upper levels where talent is much more equal, skill level is much more equal. You put all this time and sacrifice in and to dedicate to be good. That comes down to communication on the field or the court or whatever it is, oftentimes. So we're going to put a little pin in that. I want to get to this 16 team, and I want to get some real positive news for Ohio State in our headlines. First, I want to tell you about a brand new Ohio State apparel brand. They've been out for a little bit now. Premium product, unbelievable stuff. Our friends over at Backer, BCKR, that's backer.com. They're founded to make better quality fan gear. If you ever looked around, like, man, going golfing today over at Joe Burrow's golf outing, it's like, man, I wish I had like a Buckeye shirt, like this sweet golf shirt, like a sweet pullover for like skiing or fishing or hunting or whatever it is, that nice high quality stuff. Well, Backer has done that, and they've taken it to the sports apparel. They branded it up Buckeye for you, whether it's hats, coats, they've got it for you. The elite outdoor gear with loads of features that's high quality, a little bit of a premium price, but it's a premium product, and everything you buy on backer.com kicks back, goes to Ohio State student athletes. So there you go. When you're buying stuff, you're supporting the student athletes as well. Use promo code Bobby, all caps, for that expedited free shipping, so you can get you here quickly. Mother's Day is right around the corner this Sunday, but then you also have Mother's Day, but then Father's Day is coming up, times this summer, all kinds of things, graduation presents. It's great for it. So go check it out. Backer, BCKR.com. Coming up next, we got our headlines. All right, Sykes, the NCAA put out their progress reports about how teams are doing and how you produce. Your progress report is like some transfers, but it's, in fact, I'm not sure exactly all the ingredients, and there's a very complicated formula. It basically comes down to who's coming into your program and how do they leave your program. Are they in good standing? Are they graduating? All of those different things. And Ohio State just won the national championship, and so that's great. And this is off Reddit College Football. Only 5 Division I football teams have ever maintained a perfect academic progress rate over 4 consecutive years. And Ohio State obviously has done it, I think for 5, because it's 22 to 23 they did it. And then also for this last year, they had an APR is what it's called. I think APR of 1,000. And that's a testament to Ryan Day of what they've been able to do. Not only do you have great players and you're playing really well on the field, but you're also making sure guys get it done in the classroom. You're bringing in high quality human beings, and they're committed and they're to the university, and they're good representation of what a student athlete should be.
Yeah. I think the M is Mercer.
Yep.
They have some striking machines.
I think the C is Columbia, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, you have Harvard. Is that Columbia, that lion looking thing?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. So you got a couple Ivy League schools up in there. And then you got the Buckeyes. Hey, they're obviously doing something right. And
they have the Rory Lion. That's the Columbia Lions.
Yeah. So, honestly, guys, like, they're winning on the field, they're winning off the field. Like, it's everything that you want in a program. As much as we want to talk about it, like, we could be that university that has all these other off the field dramas, but you go and you look, you had no scholarship players enter the transfer portal. They obviously feel that they're being developed. The value proposition, the relationships there within the building are really strong. Guys are staying. The brotherhood is real. It's exactly what you want, something that you should be proud of.
And our headlines, I forgot to mention, are brought to you by our friends over at Lake Spur Marketing. Lake Spur Marketing, they're a full-service ad agency. They're built on trust, great strategy, performance. They do it all, folks. Lake Spur, their team shields you and your team from the unwanted outside noise, having to do cold calls. They let you do what you do best, run your business. With more than 100 years of marketing experience, so they know what they're talking about. Lake Spur eliminates waste and delivers on budget. They don't chase clicks. They help build those partnerships you're talking about. They're a great partner with us right here. Lake Spur, the proof is in the partners.
You want to go, man?
Let's go to Kirk Cignetti. We're going to save the rest of the 16-team playoff talk because there's a lot there, and I feel like that's probably a good show open on Monday.
Yeah.
Because it's going to have to be real robust to be able to get into it. And so let me know kind of your thoughts on, let's throw that Kurt Signetti up. And I'm going to let you lead it because you've been pretty passionate about this Kurt Signetti situation and maybe how he's kind of snitching on some teams of what they're doing and how this college football season and
I
this
don't care.
offseason looks.
I don't care what Kirk Signetti is saying. I mean, like, is it?
Is it the truth?
I would disagree. Like, first off, how is he going to know? Like, nobody's going out there like, oh, we're paying. And even the thing about Texas, like, what does that mean? Is that $40 million roster, but it's like, okay, they're maxed out on the revenue share and the NIL is this, and they're just making a projection as to where they are. I mean, you have first off, you have Miami, you have Texas Tech, in there. You have Notre Dame. Now, and I do know this, like Notre Dame just redid their weight room. They're building a new facility. I know they've had some really big donors that have come in and say, hey, here is a fund for your NIL. But like, what does that 40 million constitute? Because everybody can revenue share, everybody does NIL. Like, what does it actually mean? Just to throw up names in there, is ridiculous. You got Oregon, they had a big one last year. Ohio State had a big one. But honestly, and I would say this too, regardless of the number that you put out, who are the ones that, the people that Ohio State brought in, you have some defensive ends and some offensive linemen, right?
Yeah.
You have a running back. You have a running back. Yeah. But that's it. So that money is obviously being spent on players. And who cares if you're spending it on that was my whole thing of even last year with our NIL. They were predominantly all of our guys. And we've already talked about how good it is that you can keep guys in college, not just for their success to go in the NFL, but also for what they can do in your program, because we do know that veteran-led teams have a greater opportunity of winning a natty. Consequent, Michigan in 23, Ohio State 24, heavily veteran teams.
Yeah.
So who cares?
So here's the thing. Like you said, is it paying to bring in players or is it the retention of some of those veteran players? Like, if you're paying your own guys, like that's what Ohio State did. They talked a lot about that schedule and boom, Ryan didn't even buy a roster. We kept our roster, brought in a couple of guys, brought in a couple of guys this time. Like that's how you do it. You fill in some of the gaps and you know what? You may have a gap and there may not be a good guy to fill it with. So then you have to
speak more about that, Bob, because that goes into the integrity of your program. And we've all known that, Ohio State was looking in the portal for a fit in the defensive line, but keep going about that.
Well, and if you can't find a defensive tackle, then that may be what you kind of need that is fits your culture or is better than the guys you currently have. Like there's no point in bringing them in. And so I think that, early on people had kind of done that. Ohio State, there's a couple guys they made mistakes on early with that. And it's like, we're not bringing guys in just to bring them in. If they're not better than the guys we have and they don't necessarily fit and they're not grinders and all those things, then we don't need them. We don't want them. We'll keep developing and working on the guys.
Coach your guys better.
Yes. We'll coach them better and we'll make them, like I said, you get on your D-line coach, your receiver, whatever it is, what position group, and you help. This is where we need these guys to be. Let's go get them there. And that's it for our headlines today. Great little talk on that Kurt Signetti and some of the dollars and things. Like it is, I think those numbers are fairly accurate. And so like people can get upset. That's why we need adults in the room to be able to solve this problem and figure it out. And that's why we opened the show talking about that. So hopefully we'll get that done. Coming up next, we got our tailgate talk. We had some great comments. Shlay's the one show you were just on briefly. We had my man A. Ward Sports on. People were pumped to see him get back. There's some great comments and questions from that show. So we'll get to them next. All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carver Show. Our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Go to realtruck.com. Bring your truck, Jeep, or Bronco to life. Got some comments and questions in here in the chat. Keith A. Stroh, Keith
Whitley
says anything less than a natty being stripped is unacceptable with regard to Michigan, their punishments. If they get to keep that, then it teaches all kid, including my 13-year-old daughter, not only it's okay to cheat, but you should just go and do it at all costs to get an unfair advantage. More should not be allowed to coach another game. I believe this will be the case. All wins should be vacated. No bowl for 3 years. Reduction in scholarships for 3 years. Huge monetary fine. Rome needs to burn for what they did, yada, yada, yada. Spare me the hypocrisy. If OSU were guilty of this, you'd be saying the same thing. There is some truth to that. That is like the extreme of the extreme penalty strikes. I don't think it'll ultimately get to that. I think there will be elements of those that will be of those penalties that will be in there, though.
Yeah, I would say this. Like, first off, I'm not gonna like. It's good. What does it show my kid? Like, I sure in hell don't want my kid to know anything about what this world perceives to be right, wrong, or indifferent. Like, I'm gonna teach him that.
Yeah.
So I don't care what other people deem as a fair punishment for what Michigan does. And again, some of the times when we talk on here, we're not necessarily saying what we would want it to be, but what it probably could be, because we just look at the history of certain things. And I was in total disagreement with the vacating of all of 2010 and the bowl ban. Now, that's also part of our administration. It's also part of the NCAA dragging its feet. Like, I don't also see Urban Meyer actually taking the job. If he would have known that we would have had a bowl ban for the 2012 season, I don't see that actually happening. But that being said, I agree with a lot of your sentiment on what you said. I don't, to Bob's point, I don't see that all of those things are going to happen, though they probably should. But it's going to be somewhere between that and like, you're good. So there you go.
Yeah. And that's part of the problem with all this is like, does vacating wins really matter? Well, when you start talking about like total wins, and Ohio State, I think, is around 30 total wins behind Michigan all time, even though Ohio State has the all-time winning percentage. So like that would impact that number, but you watched it happen. I don't know. Like, you watched it transpire up there. Like, and so taking stuff down, the vacating of wins, sure, but they won a national championship. I watched it happen. There were means that led to it that maybe were a little scrupulous, but I don't know. I don't know what a good answer is. I think the monetary fine, reduction of NIL, scholarships, that should be enough of it moving forward. And we'll see kind of what else they come up with.
You just got to hurt them. Like, meaning like you got to put them at a competitive disadvantage moving forward. That's the why. I mean, that's the how you do it.
And we'll see how that ultimately looks. All right, coming up, we'll wrap up the show. Schlegs, you want to do some John Daly action?
Sure.
There we go. We got a little John Daly nugget for you coming up to wrap up the show. Here, Schlegs. This is your monkey, your circus. Wrapping the show with the John Daly and the Gorillas.
It was funny. We were talking about on Morning Juice. I had somebody go into the group chat and like, get Schlegs to talk about gorillas again, and I really don't want to. But then I saw this and I put it in the show sheet. And this is what I call stank. Like, I mean, if you ever hunted wild boar, a male wild boar he has this unique stank about him. And that's John Daly just walking around with just unbelievable stank. And all this talk about who would win between one gorilla and 100 men. Look, give me a driver, 10 Miller Lights, 2 packs of cigs, and put me against 100 gorillas, and I'm coming out on top. Now, I don't know if you really want a driver, but though that's what he's known for, I would like to think that in that driver is a titanium shaft because I think that the gorilla could potentially snap the fiberglass one. But that seems reasonable, John, and I appreciate your take on the 1v100, 100.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show. Stay locked in and tuned in here on Monday. Schlegs, we're going to have a big show for you. We'll have, coming off Mother's Day, 16-team playoff talk. Who knows? We'll have like a guest, but it's going to be a big one and a banger. So stay tuned, locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.